Queensland. Known as the Sunshine State of Australia, with golden beaches on the front doorstep, lush hinterland on the back doorstep, and an active city life in between, famous for its sport and fitness lifestyle. One sport that has risen to prominence in recent times is the martial art known as Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. But this wasn't always the case.
Queensland Brazilian Jiu Jitsu community back in the day was a lot smaller. It was much smaller. Everybody knew each other. White belts knew each other.
We were all white belts for maybe 4 or 5 years. So it was kind of funny. It was only very, very, very slowly that the thing developed.
We didn't really know much about the jiu-jitsu outside of our state. But it was really, really tight and really small. There was obviously a couple of guys that were there right there at the beginning.
At the beginning, it was very difficult because there was nothing. Nothing existed. There was Vince Perry on the Gold Coast and my original instructor, Ken Dunstan. They were both connected to John Will.
I did a few seminars with John Will, the martial arts group that I was involved with at the time. Would fly him up a few times a year.
But for a while, there was only a few clubs around that were doing submission style grappling. So there was Chris Haseman, who was teaching like Japanese Jiu-Jitsu, Toshi Ito, who was teaching submission arts wrestling. And then you had Ken Dunstan, who was teaching Jiu-Jitsu, and Vincent Perry. So they were both about blue belt at the time. This is back about 1993.
Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was pretty much unheard of by the general public.
I just think that they thought it was just another martial art.
Where things maybe reached out a little bit was thanks to MMA. There were all kinds of other people in Southeast Queensland who'd done all kinds of MMA-like grappling arts. It wasn't even called mixed martial arts. It was like NHB, no holds barred competitions. You know, a bunch of people jumped into, from a BJJ background, like fights rather than grappling comps. And I think, in my opinion, really thinking back on it, that was the scene. That was the competitive scene first. It was MMA fight stuff.
And then as time went on, we saw the first UFC with Royce Gracie fighting.
First heard about BJJ through a friend of mine. It was the very first UFC that had been released. We were in the restaurant and this friend of mine said, "Hey, listen, come out the back. I've got this video for you to watch." And it's these guys fighting. They're not wearing gloves. You know, it's like crazy. So we walked out the back, watched this video, and I was like, "What the hell?"
When I got those tapes, I couldn't believe what I was watching. I thought it was one of the most amazing forms of fighting I've ever seen.
It was, you know, something that was unbelievable in relation to what he was doing and how he's overcoming, you know, these huge guys.
UFC 1 was probably the first when Jiu-Jitsu really went to like a show for the world. What Jiu-Jitsu could do. Royce Gracie, you know, really came up and really show how Jiu-Jitsu was effective.
I was already training at the time Jiu-Jitsu, so I knew already that Royce Gracie was extremely good in Jiu-Jitsu, so I wasn't expecting any different result. You know, I already was counting that he was going to do really well.
It definitely a major change for the Jiu-Jitsu on the early days.
And I ended up following suit, really, because to me, and I think everyone back in the day who started Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, it was this combative art. We wore gis and did gi chokes and things like that. But at the end of the day, it was like, could I, like this little skinny Brazilian guy in a cage, could I take somebody down bigger than me? Could I, you know, cover myself against all these strikes? Could I use my arm bars and chokes and all that kind of stuff? And if anything, that was, in terms of a community, I think really the thing that broke out first.
What you saw on TV, what you saw in the UFC doesn't lie. And you know, anyone that was of any other particular martial art that encountered someone from BJJ, it was very humbling. So, and that was my first experience as well. It was just very humbling. It's like, whatever this is, I need it. But back then it was still the unknown. Everyone knew of like Taekwondo or Karate, but Gracie Jiu-Jitsu was still fairly unknown. Perception from the outside in was one of misunderstanding. You know, something new, a bit of a fad.
I found it interesting, but it wasn't actually something that I thought I would convert to or change to. I was pretty happy with where I was. It was actually only until I actually met Daniel Lima and trained with him that I thought, yeah, this guy really knows about fighting, and he really knows about putting submissions into fighting.
I would say probably it wasn't until Daniel Lima came along, which was in about 2001, I think. That's when the Jiu Jitsu started to become more popular. So that was, I'd been here for 7 years before Daniel came along. So Daniel Lima was the first Brazilian Jiu Jitsu black belt that came to Queensland. The first locally grown black belt, which has got their blue, purple, brown, black here, was myself. There were a few competitions getting around at the time. A couple of people were running competitions, and Daniel said to me, look, how about we build our own competition, Queensland Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. So I said, yeah, let's do it. If somebody's going to do it, then we should do it because we're going to do it properly.
So at the beginning, Vincent Perry, Daniel Lima, and myself, we had started to do competitions together. The experience was overall was good. We actually made a great effort, and we put a competition, like a series of competitions together. And the competitions definitely opened the awareness for Jiu-Jitsu. I put Jiu-Jitsu where it deserved at that time, with not many participants, but growing. Things start to take a nice shape with a lot of work behind the scenes. Us three put a lot of effort and tried to promote as best as we could at the time.
So QBJJL, which was the predecessor to the QBJJC, which was Eduardo Diaz, Vince Perry, and Daniel Lima all got together. And at that time, I think they were probably the three largest teams, and decided that, let's get our students, let's lift our level. So those three got together and decided, let's build this and let's try and lift the level of Queensland while we're here.
When I got here in Queensland, definitely, you didn't have much jiu-jitsu at all. Most of the guys that were doing jiu-jitsu over here was instructors or masters of other martial arts. They were just learning. At the time, they were blue belts or purple belts. And I think purple belts at the time used to be a quite high rank.
We used to have competitions back then in PCYCs, so they were small. I'd be guessing that like maybe 80 competitors all up across the belt range, and there were no divisions higher than purple belt. There were black belts, but I mean, who could they roll with? Unless it was like a super match or something.
Competition used to be very small. But when I got here, like Eduardo Diaz was working, we were working together, trying to build up. Because as a coach, we get here, the only few Brazilians like, okay, let's get together, let's organize a comp, let's try to build up. He was in Brisbane, Vince Perry as well. We worked together on the past. Mark Collins as well started to get involved with the competitions and organize the state championships.
We'd taken over the AFBJJ state championships. The first AFBJJ nationals, from my knowledge, was actually in Queensland. It was actually in Brisbane.
The growth for the Queensland Championships for the time that I had it was 6 or 7 years. We started with 74 for the first one in the shed, and we grew up to the maximum number of 352 by the time we'd finished. At the second last Queenslands that I ran, we ended up with 16 black belts competing, which was actually more than what the Pan Packs had that year. We had more compete in the open weight divisions, which there were some very exciting fights. Just got to the point that I went, yeah, I'm done. I've had enough. I'll hand it over. So I 100% gave the organisation over to Daniel, because I knew he was the right person at the time. And over the years, I think Daniel's done a really good job at moving the competition forward. They've definitely grown it in size still. As the numbers within Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu has grown, the number of clubs and the number of participants have grown. Him with Fight Club Jiu-Jitsu behind him has been able to staff it and keep them going forward. And they're now running comps every single month.
And I joined him on that. So we came together and decided we were going to put that sort of new system in place where it was going to be a circuit. We were going to try and really lift the level of Queensland. I had previous tournament experience, not only in Jiu-Jitsu but other arts. And so we sort of put that information together, that knowledge together, and we started growing and trying to offer more. And the big thing that we've done, the QBJJC, is we've really tried to make sure that we're doing it regionally in Queensland too. We want to be a proper circuit for Queensland, not just in the big city centres. We go up to Townsville, Cairns, Gladstone, Mackay, Rockhampton, all around the state, different places, trying to sort of let everybody experience Jiu-Jitsu and let it grow.
With the strong community behind it, Queensland Brazilian Jiu Jitsu has been the fastest growing grassroots martial arts style of the past few decades.
The idea of the comps, like let's do a comp, let's build the jiu-jitsu, you know what I mean? The competition was more to try to build the jiu-jitsu and try to build the gyms. And I think kind of over the long term, they kind of paid off, you know, because competition bring you exposure, more gyms develop. It was a lot of sacrifice, especially for my team, because a lot of times I'm involved in competitions, and because I'm the guy on the floor trying to organize things, I cannot get involved. I cannot be on the coach line.
Once Daniel Lima took over, he started to put more, put more effort, more work, more hard work, more effort. Jiu-Jitsu, the word was more spreaded. Started to have more gyms coming to Queensland, more black belts coming to Queensland. The community started to get bigger.
The moment I realized Jiu-Jitsu was thriving happened when I realized there was so many black belts in Queensland that I didn't know who they were. There was a time when I knew the name of every blue belt that was in our state, and now I don't know the name of every black belt. It really grew. It's great seeing tournaments grow, but tournaments only really show the tip of the iceberg about who has trained Jiu-Jitsu. So when we have a state championship that goes above 500, 600, there's a lot of people who must be currently training in Jiu-Jitsu.
Right now, you could see how much the community has grown, how much Jiu-Jitsu in our state has grown. I don't know, would I be wrong to say that probably estimated it's just maybe 10 times more bigger now than it was before. Every little town's got its Jiu-Jitsu club in there. So imagine that. Imagine that. Imagine what's going to happen in a couple of years. My goodness.
I don't know how much percent. It's definitely, a crazy amount. You're going from, getting competitions of 30, 50, 100 athletes to now to 600 athletes.
Oh yeah, like the competition every year grows so much. I remember when Cam just arrived, used to be in the ring, Pissuais, small stadium now, in Carrara, with bigger facility.
Awesome facilities. That time for me was a big change because we're used to see Jiu-Jitsu in like halls, school halls, PCYCs, like always that it needs a little bit more space, you're running out of mat area. And suddenly when he went to the stadium, everyone were accommodated, giving the right location for that Jiu-Jitsu deserves, in my opinion.
In my opinion, I think Queensland BJJ is probably the biggest one at the moment in Australia. People doesn't agree with me, but especially the guys from Victoria, but I think Queensland BJJ is the biggest. We have a lot of clubs. We have competition almost every weekend. We have very good organizations for comps. Like we have the Daniel comps, you have Sabion, you have the comps in Byron, you have very, very good, very high quality of comps.
It's a higher level comp, so that's exciting. And people, I think, will travel from far away to come compete here, so that's exciting for us.
To me, I'm very happy to see that there are so many different comps around now, so people can choose what they want to do and how they want to do it, under which rules they want to do it, under which federation they want to do it. Jiu-Jitsu Federation Australia is coming in now with under Hickson Grace and Jason Royvik, so they've had an amazing comp. Grappling industries is huge right now. ADCC that happened is also very big.
There's quite a few different competitions and brands of competitions around. Cage competitions that are around. Cage wrestling is great for the guys looking at MMA, so the ones that are looking to make that crossover. It's good for them to get in there and do that, so that's positive for the sport. They're also not running on BJJ rules. They're running more on an MMA rule system of the dominant fighter's going to win. Not worried about points, things like that. So you have to go into that with a different intention, a different mindset, and that attitude, I believe, will make you better when you step back onto the BJJ mat.
I think everyone has a different perspective. You go to a submission-only comp, it's a type of modality. If you go to a grappling with, heel hooks involves a different type of modality of grappling. You go to a Jiu-Jitsu IBJJF competition, it's different modality. So I think they all bring to the table on develop the art of Jiu-Jitsu.
So variety is so abundant that if you want to compete and you want to find a competition where you would feel comfortable with a rule set or even like location, your problem is too much choice rather than too little of it.
There's competitions everywhere, you know, like you'd be lucky to get a competition in maybe once every 3 months, 4 months, whereas now it's like back to back. So I guess in the last 5 years, as far as variety goes, it's definitely a good thing that you're having a lot more competitions, especially local competitions, because sometimes people can't get to the bigger ones if they're in major cities. So that's great for the local community. I think in the last 5 years, like maybe even like the last 7 or 8 years, the game has changed.
On the last 5 years, we had a major shift. You know what I mean? On the last 5 years, we had so many black belts that came from Brazil. We had so many Australians that they got the black belts. I've been here for 15 years, and for the first 10, they look like we stuck. You know what I mean? And things wasn't moving, everything was dragging along, and it's gonna happen, it's not gonna happen. But I think on the last 5, we had the massive boom of Jiu-Jitsu.
10 years ago in competition with very basic fundamental, pressure passing, De La Riva, really like fundamental type of Jiu-Jitsu, compared to now where, what the guys are doing, if I tried that stuff, I'll break myself.
Oh my goodness, that you guys have no idea how much comps have improved from back in the day. Right now, the comps have grown in terms of skill level, the amount of higher belts that we've got competing.
The Queensland State Championship was coming in 2016, I think. It was like so many black belts competing on that, and it was very excited to see the way we've been growing. You don't need to travel that much, just in our backyard.
You have a big amount of athletes right now doing really well, not only in the Australian scene, but actually international scene.
As far as black belt talent goes, I think Queensland's pretty up there on the top level in Australia.
Man, you have like world-class guys here now. You have like Galeb, you have Bobby, you have Poistola, Urus. You have so many good guys now at the moment.
The black belts are becoming better coaches, and we're teaching people better. They are better at blue belt than what we were at blue belt.
Blue belt back to even 10 years ago is not the same level as a blue belt now. It was completely unheard of 25 years ago to get a black belt in 4 or 5 years. But now there's lots of people that have got their black belts in 4 or 5 years.
My instructor, Daniel Lima, told me when I was a purple belt that I knew as much at purple belt as he knew at black belt when he got his black belt originally. And now I look at some of my students and I think that they know more than I know, and they're still not black belts. So the level of information and knowledge has really increased.
Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu's continual growth in Queensland reflects the worldwide impact it has made. With MMA being the fastest growing sport in the world, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu has been a major part of that success. And now the mainstream is catching on, with many seeing the benefits of the art, including the highest level of combat in the Defence Force.
So a couple of years ago, the Army approached me about coming on base and providing some instruction in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and grappling.
Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is a grappling art, and grappling makes up around about 72% of a combative fight, which is a 0 meters fight that involves soldiers fighting and wrestling with weaponry and trying to use the battle space to find combat advantage. Only issue is with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is from a sporting perspective, the combat advantages are a little bit different because we have to train for a 5-to-1 fight. So we have soldiers competing in submission-only tournaments, and that seems to be the preferred model for us. And that fits in with where we're going with our combative tournaments, which is run by the Queensland BJJC. However, it's modified to some extent with amendments that Geordie Lavis McBain helps me put into place. Having something like this that we can go and we can compete in outside sports and integrate more into our community is far better for our family structures, it's better for our social structures, and it supports defence later on, particularly when we have our discharge time and soldiers leave the Army. Well, they have to actually be able to fit back into society. And Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, because it's so inclusive, is a very easy way of doing that.
It's really inclusive of everyone. There's so many people that turn up in tournaments.
It allows a lot of people from social circles that rarely interact or touch each other to be able to meet each other and have a conversation.
People that normally would never be able to connect if it wasn't for Jiu-Jitsu. In Jiu-Jitsu, the connection of Jiu-Jitsu is probably one of the most bonding connections that you can probably get.
You have all sort of people, they're very different lifestyles, but I think when everyone gets to the mat, everyone trains, everyone's kind of become one.
The mat's colorblind. You know, it really is. Well, it is and it isn't. I mean, there is this thing with belts where there's a little bit of where blue belts won't talk to white belts and purple belts. I don't like that. To me, that should be, you know, a complete blending of colors, but also peoples as well.
I think Jiu-Jitsu grew quite a lot, especially with females, you know. Now you have, for example, in Australia, you have Australian Girls Again, that's an organization. They pretty much work with females around Australia.
Australian Girls in Gi is amazing because it brings together, without any affiliate sort of concept, it just brings women together. So that's now grown out to be, to have camps, to have women only open mats and seminars, and to have AGIG, female only competitions. I go to the AGIG camps each year this year as a black belt, which was great in previous years as a brown belt, because the focus of the AGIG camps has been to give women role models. So a lot of the white belts and the blue belts that are coming along, but particularly the white belts, have never seen a black belt female, have obviously never rolled with a black belt female. So these sorts of opportunities are coming up that give women the scope to be able to see women and know that there's pathways for them. And those pathways are really important. And those sorts of opportunities for women in BJJ will only make BJJ bigger and more accessible.
What's really great about the growth in Jiu-Jitsu in Queensland is the fact that we can now support seminars.
I think it's a great thing for the community. I think there's so many more seminars now than there ever were before.
So we have enough people in our community that can come together to help support a seminar. It used to be the only seminars that we'd be able to run would be a coach's coach would come over and then their students would come support it.
Famous Jiu-Jitsu, MMA guys, they would not come here.
Now we can actually have someone host a seminar. So Anderson Silva came over and taught at a Jiu-Jitsu club. And because of that, all these different people from all these different clubs wanted to come and get his take on how Jiu-Jitsu works in MMA. And he taught some really amazing things, and it was really good for people to take away from that. And it's just great for that ability for people to be able to come together and share that knowledge, both in seminars and with each other at seminars, and meet different members of the community.
It's just amazing being part of the whole BJJ community. The number of friendships that have developed, not only within our own academy, but across other academies, has been amazing. You automatically have something in common with other people. So it's really easy to go and train at somebody else's academy, and you're already speaking the same language.
The thing it's done for me, you know, the amazing people that I've met around the country and that sense of community. And you can not see someone for a while, but you've still got that one thing in common, Jiu-Jitsu.
My friendships in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu extend far from just this state. I have friends in every goddamn state of this beautiful country.
So many wonderful people out there. I've met so many great friends. I've never even got to train with, but I see them in tournaments. I see some of the best attitudes I've seen in sport around in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So I really love being part of this community. It's really awesome. When you meet great people, you know, how can you knock that?
I'm so proud and I'm very honored to be part of it.
For me, being part of Queensland Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu means everything for me. Like, Jiu-Jitsu is my life. I wouldn't even know what would be my life without Jiu-Jitsu, you know. All my friends are from Jiu-Jitsu, all the people I know from Jiu-Jitsu, all the references I have in life, it's to do with Jiu-Jitsu. So it's pretty much ingrained on my life. It's my identity, who I am. So for me, it's you know, it's pretty much everything. Means a lot.
I'm very proud to be one of the pioneers of the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu community here in Queensland. I'm extremely proud. For me, it was we have to put a lot of effort, and looking at the community right now, it makes me so proud, so happy. You know, I made so many friends. So I think it's a special feeling that I'm gonna carry with me forever.
We have a lot of respect for each other here, you know, especially the old school, the people been here before. You know, I have a lot of respect for them.
the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu community of this state gave me a chance to become part of this community. I'm honored to be part of it. Honestly, I'm honored. And I'm not really bullshitting. I'm actually honored to be part of that community and starting it, building it from the ground up.
To be part of the Queensland Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu community, probably from its infancy to a degree, has just been like a really good experience for me, just to see the growth. You know, lucky enough to have come in at a time where there weren't many around in Queensland, and to see the growth of that, you know, from its birth possibly to where it is now, it's very rewarding. You know, I can't say that I've had much impact, but you know, to witness it, for sure, it's a great thing.
It's such a positive vibe, I think, in the community. Plus, you know, we're in a growth. We're still growing in this country and in Queensland especially. We've got so much growth still to go.
I sort of look at those early days and I think, you know, we've come so far. Like the Jiu-Jitsu in Queensland has come so far. It used to be a club here and a club there, and that was it. One in Brisbane, one on the Gold Coast, and now there's clubs everywhere. There's clubs opposite each other on streets. There is so many clubs that it's just great to see that growth.
It's not one person. It's not one person that is the Jiu-Jitsu person. It's not one club, and it's not, you know, just guys, it's just girls, it's just kids. It's like it's everyone. Everyone's part of this ecosystem of Jiu-Jitsu, and for that happen, everyone's gotta get involved, and everyone's gotta support, and everyone's gotta make a fair share of little bit sacrifice here and there. And I can see Queensland in another 5 years, it's gonna be a very strong state, because now every single year we grow more and more.
With the strong community behind it, there's no doubt Queensland Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu will only continue to rise.